Hello, Real Clinicians. This is Ali Nessa coming to your street site on New Year's Eve here in Boston. First night ceremonies in Boston are fairly intricate. There's a lot of ice sculptures and things like that going on, and I was kind of walking around. I figured I'll do a quick video tutorial for you guys here. Well, maybe not so quick because we're going to do CBL 22. So hang around for this one. CBL 22 coming up. Okay, so as you can tell, there's a lot of noise out here on the street side. So we're going to go inside, and I'll narrate over this case of tooth number 20, and then we'll come back and close on it. Okay, this is a mandibular second premolar that presented with a pulpal diagnosis of necrosis and an apical diagnosis of asymptomatic apical periodontitis. This patient was experiencing pain and was happy to be able to be seen for the root canal procedure. The radiograph shows us a tooth with a pulp and what appears to be some mid-root dystrophic calcification. Now, this can sometimes be a fast break or the presence of two canals that are superimposed, but it could also be just pure dystrophic calcification that happens in cases with chronic inflammation due to microleakage or a crack. Now, no crack was visible in this case, and the cause of the necrosis appeared to be a chronic defective composite restoration that the patient had not restored for a long time, which had caused microleakage. As usual, we begin our case with obtaining the estimated working length from the radiograph, and it appears to be about 20 millimeters. I proceeded to isolate the tooth with a rubber dam, and using the real-world endo access kit, I begin with a wheel diamond to flatten the cusps. Now, this flattening, as you know, is to get a better reference point for working length and also to reduce the tooth out of occlusion. But this is only done in cases where a crown is planned, and as was indicated in this particular case by the patient's referring dentist. Now, we then proceed with the outline from using the next burr in our access kit, which is the 1558 saber cut burr. Once the outline form is complete, I use the E14D on my Forza V3 ultrasonic to remove the dentinal mud that's created from the access preparation, as well as clean the chamber from the coronal necrotic pulp. Now, smooth out this access lines with the ultrasonic, which because of its diamond coating, and also it creates a smooth and confluent line right into the chamber so your files can easily slide down and get into the chamber. Now, my ultrasonic uses distilled self-contained water, but once I'm done with the ultrasonic, I always add either sodium hypochlorite to turn the water into bleach, or in this case, I add some canal clean, which is an EDTA solution with a surfactant added so that it becomes more effective in removing the smear layer and loosening the dystrophic calcification before I begin the instrumentation. Now, usually I also begin with an orifice opener, but here I just start with the expediter file to see what I have. Now, it turns out that the ultrasonic energy and the canal clean combination have helped open up and loosen up some of this dystrophic calcification. Now, you can use the rhythm motion here if you're using the EndoSync handpiece, or you have to use the SSC, which is single stroke and clean, in any other handpiece. I did this case about 2 years ago, so I didn't have the EndoSync at that time. And so I used the SSC motion here with my EndoSequence handpiece. Given the radiographic calcification, I used hybridization of tapers to measure length. Following one stroke of 1505, 1504, and then 1502 in what I've already previously described as hybridization of tapers, I was already approaching the estimated working length with my 1502 Scout, ESX Scout file. Since I didn't have the EndoSync AI during this case, which as I mentioned was a little while ago, I connected my PAL apex locator, which was what I was using previously, directly to the ESX Scout file to measure the working length. This is a poor man's version of the EndoSync and EndoSync AI combination, but it kind of works with the ESX Scout 1502. Now, surprisingly, the ESX Scout 1502 reached the apex, and the apex locator confirmed a working length of 21 millimeters. Now, following working length, the expediter is worked to the apex continuously using the SSC. A few strokes later, the expediter is
at the apex, and at this point, once the expediter is worked to the apex, a decision has to be made as to what size ESX finishing file should be used in this case. Given the preoperative radiograph and the apparent dystrophic calcification, I decided to use a size 35 ESX finishing file first to see where I end up. However, I quickly found that this size 35 reached the apex fairly easily, so I decided to move up to the size 45 from the basic protocol. The 45 takes a nice chunk of circumferential dentin, but it also reached the apex fairly easily. So copious irrigation is also used in between all instruments, which I'm not showing here. At this point, I decided to see if I can jump up to a size 60 endosequence file. The 60 endosequence file gets engaged about 2 to 3 millimeters from the apex and appears to have a significant amount of necrotic tissue in the file flutes. This is a great indication of adequate engagement. This file is then moved to the apex using SSC gently to engagement, and then once the apex is reached, I use this lateral kind of a brushing motion against the dentinal walls to completely clean the walls and remove any necrotic debris or tissue that might be remaining on the walls. The use of a size 60 was because the previous files were not getting engaged quite as heavily. And as a result, a size 60-04 is then chosen as the master file in this case. Once instrumentation is complete, it's time for removal of the smear layer with the aid of the ultrasonics and again using the canal clean solution. The ultrasonic is great at removing the smear layer and disrupting any remaining biofilm, and the canal clean will help remove any of the debris that may have been packed into the dentinal tubules. After smear layer removal, thorough disinfection now, at this point using a high volume of full-strength hypochlorite, is used with negative pressure. Now this disinfection step is clearly a critical component of success. The canal is now cleaned out and checked for any additional drainage. If drainage is still present, you would use calcium hydroxide in this case and as a temporary dressing and reschedule the patient for the fill. If there's no drainage and the canal is dry, you've already adequately cleaned and disinfected it, so you can proceed to then obturate the case in the same visit. Using the BC sealer in the coronal half of the root, I inject and then I push all the way down to the apex using a file and seat the previously fitted BC cone to the apex. As usual, we sear off using a high-energy cordless heat source, such as the EndoPro 270, and condense at the orifice using first a size 10 chiller plugger and then some of the smaller size pluggers so that you can condense the gutta percha right at the cavo surface margin against the tooth so that none of the sealer is showing. Since the tooth will be restored by my referring dentist, cavity is placed in the access opening after cleaning and removing of the excess cement using again the ultrasonic with water. Compared to the preoperative radiograph, you can see that the calcification in the mid-root area is replaced successfully with an adequately enlarged and a dense fill to the apex with a small puff of BC sealer. The objective of cleaning and shaping were achieved in this case, but the entire case took really only about 11 minutes from beginning to the end. I know some may argue that a longer time is needed for irrigation and disinfection in these kinds of cases, and I do agree that if you don't use a lot of ultrasonic and full-strength hypochlorite using negative pressure, that may be what you need to do. But here I used a full 10 cc of full-strength warm hypochlorite using negative pressure at the end of the procedure. And I also enlarged the canal to a very large size of a size 60-04, and all of this stuff helps catalyze the disinfection and the removal of the biofilm. Of course, as I always say, the proof is in the pudding. So the patient returned exactly 1 year after the procedure was done for a recall, confirming the full healing of the lesion at the apex and an asymptomatic tooth. The core had been placed immediately after the root canal treatment, but the patient had apparently waited a year in the provisional. So, this is the kind of procrastination that patients often do, which causes them to need a root canal. But apparently, at this point, this patient had waited again so long with the provisional and had canceled a bunch of appointments with the restorative dentist. So, this is why a recall is important. I finally got a chance to remind and motivate this patient to follow up with his dentist for the final crown.
Okay, so as you can see, some of the limitations of any instrumentation system is finding that final finishing file. And obviously you want to have the largest size possible considering the anatomy of the root and what you're dealing with. And one of the promises of ESX is that it allows you to use the least number of files given the type of a canal, that you have. Of course, this case demonstrates even the difficulty of finding that finishing file even with the ESX. So this is a universal problem, and in this case, as you saw, we had to use a couple of different finishing files in order to finally determine the final finishing file that was used. Of course, we did get our success finally at the end, but it needed to have a couple of finishing files. With the New Year's Eve around the corner, what I can promise you is in the coming year, we have some exciting developments for you, because I think this issue and this problem of what should be your finishing file is about to be solved using a new instrumentation system I'm going to talk to you about in 2017. So I'm very excited about that, and stay tuned to hear more about it. So here it is at the end. Oh, I wanted to also thank my videographer. As you know, I always do these things on my own, but tonight I have a very special guest who's also helping me with the videography, and it's my son, Darian Nasseh. Darian, thank you so much for helping me out, and also wanted to wish you all a happy new year, happy 2017, and in the coming year I look forward to share more knowledge with you guys on the web and also on our seminars on the ground. Happy 2017 to all of you.